Welcome to College Bound Success, College to Career, the podcast for college curious and college bound students and families. Together, we'll navigate the journey from high school to higher education and beyond. I'm Mark Mostalski, an independent college success consultant. I'm here to share strategies and insights, but honestly, mainly stories and conversations to help you make confident choices about college, careers, and beyond. So let's get started. Today, I am really excited to be joined by Anthony Martin. Anthony and I have a little bit of crossover due to some time at Fort Lewis College, so I'm excited to reconnect with him. Anthony currently lives in Littleton, Colorado, which is just outside of Denver. Graduated from Fort Lewis College with a BA in English Communications. He's been in media and media land since he was 19 years old. At first as a radio host for KDUR Community Radio. That's another place we have connection, Anthony. I was a DJ for KDUR as well. I had the 6 a.m. show on Thursday mornings. Loved it. So there's a lot of crossover there. And then he also became a host at Four Corners Broadcasting in the Four Corners area. He's been a media technician at NBC Universal, a producer for Theo podcast in LA. He's been a producer for Fox Sports Radio and currently a tech helper with a startup called Waltz. That's WALTZ. Again, residing just outside of Denver. He does daily yoga, meditation. He's a frequent concertgoer and collects vinyl. And he's also an avid. He has backpacked in Europe and recently visited Japan. So we're going to definitely talk about all those things and hopefully more. So, Anthony, thanks so much for joining me and being here.
Of course, Mark. It's good to reconnect again, and I love our little shared KDUR life. You know, that's like a true lineage if you've been a host there. I actually did the 4 a.m. show on Thursdays.
You did?
Yeah, and I remember John Lynch when I had signed up. He was like, he double looked. His guys was like, "Are you gonna show up?" And I was like, "I will.
Yeah.
Those
yeah. They're still there. You know, John is still there, and of course Brian Liggett running the radio station, and a great team there. It is really, I think I've spoken to some other folks on this podcast. Haley May, who also had a background, with the Independent and also with KDUR at Fort Lewis. So there's some pretty stellar folks who come out of that program.
Yeah, and it was really good. It was such a fun time because, I think because it was so small, it kind of let you do whatever. And so you just kind of got to mess around and make mistakes. And just since it was structured, but, small enough, I felt like it was just the best way to learn, honestly, of larger school personally. So I loved it. And Haley and I was one of the first people to start the indie with the video production side of it. Brought Haley on 2012, 13, something.
Yeah. I think you touched on it a little bit. I think one of the things, and even for me as a DJ, when I wasn't a student, right? I was a professional there. They're so welcoming, right? They want students, they want community members, they're just always welcoming. And to your point, it's like a laboratory, right? And I even found that with music. Like I would just like, what's this? And stick it in the CD player and let's see how this goes. So it was a great time. Well, thanks for being here. I will say, so that bio of yours is just, from your work with, Theo Vaughn's podcast in LA and Fox Sports. So there's a lot in there, but let's just start beyond that. What would you like people to know about you?
That's a great question. I guess just in general, I guess I would want people to know, and if it's, particularly through a lens of like college and stuff like that, I would just say that, everyone always says follow your passions and, you won't work a day in your life, or just like always push forward. But like in my experience, it's true, but it's never ever a straight line. It's
Mhm.
or you look back on your time and then you're like, how did I get here? And it's never exactly as you planned, even if you plan as well as you can. And that's exactly what I did. I'm very routine, and I had a strict idea as to what I wanted to do. But I think in general, I just want people to know that all I heard a lot was like the things I can't do, or that it's too
Mhm.
far, and that it really didn't matter as long as you kind of worked hard enough and you really wanted to do it. Every time I got quote unquote lucky, it was also having to coincide with me,
Mhm.
putting in the effort and the work to do that. And even now, as I'm outside of that realm and not even in my field anymore, it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it and wouldn't have done it over 10 more times. But I think I just want people to know that it's very daunting to try to enter in a career field that you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
But if you want to do it enough, you can do it. And that's
Yeah.
proof of that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that. And I think you'll have a really good story here for people to learn about. So let's talk about your journey.
Okay.
Where did it start? Like, where did you grow up, and what was that like?
Yeah. So I'm from Littleton. I'm actually living in Denver now.
Yeah.
And born and raised, my whole family's from here.
Okay.
I was the first one in my entire family to go to college on either side. So
You were first gen.
first gen, it was a very big deal at the time. Nobody ever pressured me into it, but I just never, it was never a question of whether or not I wanted to go. And it was particularly just because I really liked learning, and I had an affinity for radio hosting. That was kind of my dream at the time. It just seemed so, I used to remember listening to like morning radio, and I was like, these guys get paid to just kind of like talk and mess around. And I just thought
Like
that
us, just banter back and forth.
exactly. And they always sounded like they're having so much fun. And I just was like, that's a job. Like, that's really a job, just to talk and play some music. So, um, yeah. And then, I grew up in Denver, and, we didn't have the most financially stable life. So I moved around a lot, but we were always sort of in the suburbs or just somewhere in Denver. And, I wasn't the best student. Especially in high school, like I played football and stuff, but I think I had a 2.7 GPA. And
Mhm.
I think part of that was just, I learned once I got to college that if it's something that you're interested in, all of a sudden it's not as hard as it seems. And a lot of the subjects in school, ironically, I was really good at math and physics, and I was horrible at English, and I was horrible at, writing. And funny enough, I remember writing one time in my senior year, and the teacher was like, "This is actually really good, Anthony. Like, you should kind of keep going with this." And that was the first time I had ever even thought about something like that. And it was
Mm,
that small off comment that I was kind of like, okay, maybe there's something I can do with this, or just
mm,
nice to hear that, because in my mind, I thought creativity was like something that you kind of naturally have, and you just saw some people that were really good at it, and like math always made sense to me, but I just never
yeah.
being able to write and be creative was something that could either pay the bills or just something that I could be good at. And then there was a stark difference between high school and college, and I noticed it almost immediately. So I actually did not start my college career at Fort Lewis.
Okay.
um, I went to Metro at the time. It was called MSU. It was Metro
Uh-huh.
uh, College of Denver. Or actually, so yeah, it was MSD something. I can't remember the name of it at the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Metropolitan State in
yeah,
Denver there. Yeah.
and that was a totally different experience. My dream was to go to CU. I wanted to do the whole. I wanted to, go to broadcasting. I looked into like Syracuse and Northwestern. I didn't have
Mm,
the grades, couldn't afford it. And I wanted to get out of the state so bad, but it was always just too expensive. And
mm,
much as I thought I could have gone and loaded up on my debt to get there, I knew, I'm like, I don't think it's worth it in my mind. So then naturally, I went to Metro. They shared a campus with three other colleges, and I lived in downtown Littleton, and then I used to take the light rail every morning down to the
wow.
school with some other friends of mine. But they didn't have dorms, and the average
Right.
student was like 25 years old, and
Uh-huh.
a lot of people on like the vet program and stuff. But I don't know. I didn't. It wasn't the greatest time for me. There wasn't that many like-minded kids, and the first year of college is kind of annoying because it's so much gen ed stuff. It feels like you're in high school again a little bit. It's like
Mhm.
I really have to take like basic physics and stuff. So that got annoying, and I wanted to find something else. And I wanted to do the dorm life. I really wanted to expand and just kind of immerse myself in the school. And it wasn't like that at Metro. And I'll
Mhm.
never forget one time having a class, and there was three of us, and I'm talking to one kid, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to UC Denver," and I was like, "Wait a second, but we're in the same class together," and he's like,
Right.
"Yeah, I guess," and then I was like, "So, well, you're a sucker because you're paying more for the same class." And then the kid next to me is like, "I'm at Denver Community College, so you're the."
Yep. Community College of Denver, University of Colorado, Denver, and Metro State are all on the same campus.
And as cool as it was to be downtown in Auraria, I also was 19, so there wasn't that many things I could do. And
Mhm.
I just thought it was a weird situation. It wasn't, I was like, I always found myself while I was there going, I'm not going to graduate here. I'm not going to be
Mhm.
here, even if the radio station seemed cool. And yeah, so then I started looking at other schools. I knew I wanted to stay in state because of cost. And then I
Mhm.
had much better grades in college. So immediately it was a lot easier to transfer. And
Okay.
more just finding the schools that could accept my transcripts or my credits that I'd already had. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I went and toured around to a couple different schools. CSU was not my favorite. It was just really big and just kind of
Mhm.
too much. And CU was like a beautiful dream, but I was also like, I still can't afford this in state, and it just seemed
Mhm.
kind of too much. So then I went to, I didn't even know what Fort Lewis was. I just looked up cheapest colleges in Denver, Colorado,
Sure.
and that popped up. And yeah, so then I visited a couple other schools, and then I went to Fort Lewis, made that drive, 6 hour drive through mountain ranges, and just kind of fell in love with it. And once I had moved there, I kind of learned from other people too. It's kind of its own universe. Like you
Mhm.
want to go to Durango and just kind of detach from the world a little bit because you're just so isolated from everything else, but it has just enough of everything that it doesn't feel like it's lacking something.
Right.
Um, so then I went, and immediately I fell in love because of KDUR. I just thought it was so cool and just how open they were that the first class I signed up for was basic radio.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, and they were like, you get to be on radio. Like that's like the part of the class. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I get to like, actually do all it's not like practice. They're like, you're on air. If you miss, and one of the first times I ever went on, John came in and he was like, you missed the tagline, you missed the time, you missed like the FCC. And he was like, don't ever do that again. Slam the door. And then I was just in my head. From that point on, I was like, I'll never ever miss that again. And I mean, you're shaking. It's your first time, and but it was fun. It was really really fun, and they actually had an entire video studio next door that was collecting
Mhm.
dust. They had like a $12,000 video studio that was collecting dust.
Mhm.
I couldn't believe it. So
Yeah.
I remember I just went to ask them. Again, it's just curiosity. They were just like, do you want to do something with it? Be my guest. Here's the key to this thing. And so I was writing for the independent news, which, the indie as they called it. And
Yeah.
I just asked the professor at the time, Leslie Blood, who was fantastic, if I could start a video department. And she was like, yeah, be my guest. So then we called it Fort Field News. That was the first time I ever done anything like that. And since I was the one that started it, I kind of became like the, production manager, like editorial manager for it, and kind of made our own separate wing. And then, I was living in the dorms and just kind of immerse myself in that college life. And I will say, as excited as I was, and how much I didn't think I fully prepared for just living somewhere else like that. And at first, it was pretty hard. I'm not gonna lie. It felt hard to make friends. It felt hard to like just kind of adjust my life to it. But then, once I did, I had a great time. I had a great time, and everybody I knew was either working at a grocery store or something like, and that's not to knock on that. Like I was working at King Supers and they were like, we have a store in Durango if you want to go work there. And I was like, absolutely not. I don't want
Oh,
to be associated. I want to start fresh. I want
yeah,
to,
fresh start.
yeah. And so then I did that. And I went that first year, was taking my basic courses. I picked communications. I never thought about anything else. I just from day one, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do video. I want to do radio. And then over the summer, I went back to Denver and I just started looking up radio stations in Durango. And long story short, I cold called Four Corners Broadcasting, and the station manager at the time, Ed Lacey, was basically like, "Oh,
Mhm.
so you saw the ad?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he was like, "You didn't know we're hiring? Like we're looking for a host." And I was like, "I have no idea." And so I did the interview over the phone while I was sitting in a golf ball picker up, working at a golf course.
Did you really?
So I stopped the cart and got off and took the phone out, and and he was like, honestly, I love you. You sound great, and like when you come back, we'll get you started. And some might say that that's falling, ass backwards into it, but also if I hadn't have,
Not at all. Yeah.
I would have never known. And yeah, so then that's how I got that job. And
Wow.
um that was in itself a crazy, crazy job, but it was so much fun. So they had four radio stations in that one building, and one was news, sports, country, and Radio 101, just like right
Yeah.
pop. And yeah, so I got hired, and Ed said the main host is going to be out for 2 weeks, and you need to like learn how to do all this by Thursday. And so I did. And I would host a show on Sunday mornings, and then I would do production coordination for all of the different shows because you'd have to preload these shows and then add in breaks. So then when nobody was on air, there was still like something playing. So they
Yeah.
indicate like blues shows. And then I used to board op every game that the ESPN Syndicate 1600 KIUP hosted.
Mhm.
So then I would get paid $35 per game to sit down and board op. And all I would do is I would turn on the game, get the live feed, and then when they went to commercial, I'd have to fade down and then fade up our commercials. And it would be for Fort Lewis basketball and soccer,
Okay.
football. We would do CU football, Broncos, Nuggets, and Avs, and Rockets.
Okay.
So I used to just sit there and I would board up, and then I would do my radio show on Sunday mornings at 7 to 11.
Uh-huh.
And that was I was so excited because I was like, I can make rent and like pay for my college. I wasn't making good money, but
Mhm.
enough to eat and pay, and I didn't have to, work at a restaurant or anything. So it was so
Right.
to go to school, and then I could do this radio stuff, and then in between just hang out with friends and stuff like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes, I worked there all 3 years while I was at Fort Lewis, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I still would do radio shows once in a while for KDUR, and
Mhm.
I just did as much as I could. And looking back on it, I was so busy that I didn't have time to think about too much. Like it was kind of a good thing. I was learning so much that I didn't really have the chance to breathe, to question any of it. It was just do it and learn the
Right.
stuff. So that was a great, great time. And then
Yeah.
um, then there's just a lot of forks in the road from there. One summer after, between junior and senior, I went back to Denver, and I was the first ever video intern for Westward magazine.
Oh, really? I love Westward.
Yeah, and that was really fun. So I didn't have a camera, and the only camera was at Fort Lewis. So I remember asking Leslie Blood if I could borrow the camera for the summer, and it was
Mhm.
a tape camera. So I had bought like stacks of tapes, And the internship was great because they treated me like I worked there. So when we'd have the production meeting every Monday, I'd have to come in and pitch ideas
Mhm.
and they would, half the time. And I learned real quick because I brought up these pitches and they were like, this isn't even like news. I don't know what
Yeah.
you're doing.
So Anthony, for those that don't know, briefly, how would you describe Westward in terms of as a a magazine
Yeah.
and
Westward's kind of like the fun local alternative free magazine. Like you'll find it out front of like a lot of bars and restaurants around Colorado and Denver.
Mhm.
And it's a free magazine, but they would be, they'd have concerts in it and stories. And it's just kind of like a offbeat but local only magazine. And then they
Right.
have a website too. So they used to host a lot of events and they're still around it. I love them. I still grab them every time I see a new magazine anywhere. So
Yeah.
that was a fun experience in itself and a lot of learning too, because not only did I have to go pitch and shoot it, then I'd have to edit it and then send it back in. And then I got good at being able to critique my pitches so that they would let me go, even if it was
Right.
something that I want. Like I wanted to go to Comic-Con and I was able to convince them to let me go. And like,
Oh, really?
yeah, so I got to do a bunch of fun stuff. Like I remember the first one, my first ever assignment, because like I said, they didn't like any of my pitches. They're like, well, you have to go to this. And it was the firefighter calendar like walkway show. So it was just like all 40-year-old women just having the best time of life.
Screaming.
And I was like, of course, this is like the first assignment I get. It just nothing I would have ever picked myself, but I was like, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I did that over the summer and I didn't get paid, but I didn't care because it was great, great portfolio building. And I learned a lot and Westward, and I learned a lot about a newsroom, a professional newsroom. And one thing I learned is that they just don't care. Like if they're not going to hold your hand. They don't care
Yeah.
if you're struggling. Like it's just either come with some ideas and you can produce or kind of fall. And it
Right.
was a really good build for me. But it also kind of taught me that I'm not the biggest fan of news and newsrooms. It wasn't that I didn't like it.
Mhm.
I think I wanted to be more creative or just kind of do something else. I didn't think I wanted to be in that kind of environment for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
Um,
So Anthony, I'd like to kind of just step back and ask you some things because you started off, you identified that you're first gen, so you really didn't have anybody in the family who was like, hey, this is how you do it, so you had, it sounds like a teacher who kind of impacted you through just maybe an offhanded comment like, hey, this is pretty good, and then all of a sudden it opened up your eyes to that opportunity. Is same way that you shared the story about cold calling Four Corners Broadcasting. So those two things, when I hear you talk about those two things, it kind of connects to me with like you have this innate ability and willingness, I would say, to be like, I'm gonna say yes. Like I'm gonna go for it, right? What would you say to somebody who heard your story? I'm 18 years old. I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do, next summer. And I hear you talk about cold calling a radio station. And in my mind, I go, I could never do that. I could never do that. What would you tell me? What's your advice?
I would tell you honestly, stop. I mean, and it's gotten worse for me, if anything, since I've gotten older. Is just don't think about it too much. Like because I was naive, it kind of worked out in my favor. But I would tell somebody the worst they'll do is, they'll hang up or laugh at you or reject you, but like, don't think about it too much. If you're interested in it, just reach out, talk to them. And I have more stories about how I got my other jobs doing the same thing. Like seriously, don't think about it too much. Don't try to seek too many opinions. If you're like, I'm interested about this thing, just learn about as much of it as you can and just kind of
Mhm.
let them know that you're around. And I could have easily asked a ton of different people if it was appropriate to call and whether I should or how should I go. No, I'm just because I called And because I was excited and willing, they could tell that over the phone. And it was the same
Yeah.
writing from the teachers. So like seriously, analysis, or what is it? Paralysis by analysis. Like don't think too much about it. Like just just really,
Mhm.
if it sounds good, if it feels good, and it's something you want to do, lead with your energy and don't worry too much about what other, because I would have had so many people I know in my life been like, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do it this way, and they would have been dead wrong, because
Mhm.
I told other people even at KDUR that they were like, how did you get that job? Like, what did you, and I was like, I just called them, and I didn't
Mhm.
know any better. So yeah, don't think about it too much. Seriously, especially if you're young, especially if you're just starting out. I was surprised at how many people were willing to help me out, to put me under their wing and be like, oh, you don't know what you don't know, but I want to see you succeed because you work here, or because you clearly want to do the work. And
Right.
you know, the schedules suck and the pay sucks, but like what doesn't that you want to do, that's fun and something that you're interested in. Yeah, don't.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I also, one of the things I also appreciate about your story, and this connects to college decisions, right? So you mentioned earlier, Boulder was kind of like like Boulder would have been great, but it was too expensive. You weren't a fan of Colorado State. So you end up at Fort Lewis, and lo and behold, here is a production studio that is just waiting for you, right?
Yeah.
It's waiting for a student to come in and say, can I do something with this? And somebody said yes. And I wonder, like, how many schools where people go, like, does that opportunity just present itself? And it's not that it presented itself, it's again another thing that you said, I'm going to ask about, like, your curiosity, right? I'm going to ask about this. And to your point, what's the worst they say? No, but nobody's using this beautiful, brand new production studio, video studio, and you helped, kind of leave that legacy.
Yeah, and it was, talking to a lot of kids that I ended up meeting later in life at NBC and stuff that went to, other colleges. It's not so much that I learned more than them. It's just very much structured, and it was very like, you can't come into the studio at this time or this time. And for me, it was, yeah, just that curiosity, but also, you know, yeah, it was simply just knowing, or just trying to find out. And I think that was one of the best parts about going to a smaller school, was that they
Yeah.
were a little more lax, and maybe you don't get as much specific training, but at the same time, I felt like that's not what I needed. What I needed to do was get into that studio and kind of mess things up and figure out how to, do it again. So yeah, curiosity goes a long way, regardless of what kind of school you're looking for.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't
Yeah.
feel too.
Yeah. So when you reflect back on that time period, you mentioned um your first year, you knew Metro State was not going to be the school you graduate from. But you also mentioned how you were a better student in college, right, in that first year of college. What do you attribute that to? What was different in that first year that wasn't happening for you when you were in high school?
Well, to be honest, and I was told by a lot of people, and it was one of the first things my professor said on my first day was like, I'm not going to baby you. You're paying to be here. And that kind of clicked with me and resonated that, like, oh yeah, high school is you have to do this.
Mm,
College is I'm choosing to be here. So if you're
mhm.
going to pay thousands and thousands of dollars, take time out of your day, I guess I might as well put in some true effort into this, because otherwise you're just kind of wasting your time and your money. And so that really kind of stuck with me, that she was like, you can come if you want or not, the check still clears. So
We're still keeping your money.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, damn, like that's true. If I am paying for this, like I might as well get something out of it. And sure that some of those classes were very basic and stuff like that, but you meet cool people, and it's nice to meet other people outside of your realm, because particularly in college, every year it seemed the classes got smaller and it was the same people. So by the end, it was like I had the same classes with like 15 people for like 3 years. But and then just in general curiosity, it's nice once you get out of high school, because it's all new people and faces instead of the same faces and attitudes that you had heard for the last 4 years or for 12 years. So it was just a totally different environment, and it was nice to be in an environment with like-minded people and just willing to learn. It was nice. It felt nice to learn and to be smart, and to kind of see what you know and you don't know. And so I just had a real shift once I got to college and realized, like, I'm choosing to be here, and it's fun to kind of push myself and to see what I am interested in, because then you start learning about other topics that you have no interest in. That's the other thing. Getting to pick your classes is awesome. Getting to pick your electives is great, and getting to just kind of like see what sticks is a lot different than high school. So my two favorite times was when I was picking classes for the time, and then right after finals, when you just like, I did it and I can breathe for a minute. So
Yeah. Yeah. You, before we hit record on this, you shared with me that you're about 10 years out, from your graduating from Fort Lewis. And I'm wondering, when you reflect back on that, what would you say is, as you've had different jobs and now you're with a startup, what do you think is like a key transferable skill that you brought with you from college that has enabled you to have success through all these kind of transitions?
That's a great question. I would probably say structure and accountability.
Okay.
And in the sense of, like I said, a lot of professors are like, I'm not going to hold your hand. You know what's due and you know when it's due. And I'll show you, what the classes are, but everything else is up to you. So I like that, because then I could take my time learning it and kind of structuring it myself. So a lot of jobs are like that. And I had so many experiences in these jobs, particularly in media, where they kind of threw you to the wolves. And
Okay.
when I got hired, they were like, you gotta pick this up. You gotta pick this up in like a week, and you know, good luck, kind of thing. And so, in the same vein that college was like that, where here's the information, good luck, but it better be good, and I expect it by this time. And a lot of jobs are like that. Some jobs are a little more, technical with their training and how they do it. But for the most part, a lot of my jobs, I had to pick it up quick, and I had to kind of like, get running immediately. And so if you don't know how to do that, it really hurts you. And you could kind of tell when some people would get hired and they would just kind of panic, because they just like, well, you're not training me. And it's like, well, then you need to figure out how to train yourself.
Right.
A lot of people just don't have time for that. And particularly with a job is just a further extension of work, where instead of you're paying to go there, now I'm paying you. So I expect something, and I expect it quickly. And that really helps with just sort of like, it's almost like a transition into how to be an adult and how to be a functional one. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, moving us back then, to career and jobs and so forth. You're working for a startup called Waltz. Who is Waltz, or what is Waltz? And what do you do? And what's it like with a startup?
yeah, so this is my first experience with a startup. I've worked mainly either with freelance or Fortune 500 companies that are they don't change much, and they will always be there and very systematic. So this has been I've been there for about 2 months now, and this has definitely been a transition for me. One thing I've noticed, it's kind of like what I've heard, and it was a perfect anecdote, was when I worked at NBC, it was a cruise ship. If you wanted to change direction, it took a long time, and you need to get a lot of opinions before you do it. And,
Right.
but you're not feeling the weather as much. You're not feeling the waves and the
Gotcha.
startup is the exact opposite. You're in a tugboat, you feel every wave, but you can change directions quickly. So when I have questions, a lot of the times I get, that's a good question. Like, why don't you work on that? Or
Uh-huh.
but Waltz itself is they just got out of beta testing now, and it's really a great concept. So what they're trying to do and what we are doing is um, tech has sort of left the elder generation behind. And especially now, I feel like even people my age, we try to catch up with updates and what's going on. So
Right.
essentially a tech solution for the older adults, and we're training them or helping them and guiding them along just any sort of tech issues that they have. And
Hmm.
a lot of the times what we find is that they are just so appreciative that somebody's there to help their hand, to hold their hand or to guide them into training and just learning the basics of whatever they need. And I
Mhm.
think we all have an experience with IT and how hard it is to get somebody to help you to get the right answers and there's somebody to take the time. So it's been really
Mhm.
rewarding to just see the little wins you get throughout each session and these calls for these people that are just so appreciative of somebody that's willing to take the time for them.
Yeah. How did you kind of land with that role with Waltz?
So yeah, I was my good friend TJ McBride, he actually he used to write for the he was a beat writer for the Nuggets.
Oh,
And so he was we were kind of, side by side for the good part of 7+ years in media and just the crazy schedule and life that is that. And then he found this job through his good friend and yeah, just kind of referred me. And I was in my second stint in NBC Universal. And, I just kind of got burnt out with the corporate life and, the job market's been a little tough with
yeah.
specifically the stuff I've been trying to do or had done in the past, and I just
Hmm.
felt like a good time to make the jump and to just try something else for a while.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, for those of you that are listening to this and not watching it, I'm starting to fall into the elder category a little bit. I'm almost 53, but I will tell you, my parents are in their 80s, and it just watching them try to navigate the world of tech and how it is changing. For example, my dad um, just got new hearing aids, and his new hearing aids are fantastic, and they connect to his phone. Only they only connect to Apple,
Hmm.
right? They only connect to an iPhone. He's never had an iPhone,
Hmm.
so not only are you navigating new hearing aids, now you're changing from a device that you've known about for years to a new device with a different operating system. And it's been, just something to kind of watch and try to help him navigate and let's figure this out. But they live in rural northern Wisconsin. There just isn't a lot, like you're not going to go into a store and this person is going to sit down for an hour with you. So that kind of stuff, yeah, it is hard on folks.
No, and that's exactly what they're aiming to fix. And it's true. I mean, most of us, particularly kids in my age, we grew up with Apple, so we understand the intuitiveness of it. But if you I've had to sort of take a step back and, like as you said, if somebody's never seen an iPhone, the hand gestures and motions alone would just seem otherworldly, because if you don't know, it just seems like you're so far advanced with it. So
Right.
there truly is a space for it, and I completely understand and really respect what they're trying to do with it, because
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. You mentioned that when we look back over some of your other jobs, you were freelancing. Is that right? Okay. I think a lot of people, I'd like to dig into that a little bit, because the reason I ask is I don't think in our society we do a great job of teaching people about like building a personal brand, right? And being an entrepreneur and business skills and the idea of freelancing. I think because of that, people are well, if I don't get offered a job by a company, what am I going to do in life? So as somebody who's kind of gone through that, what was freelancing like? How did you land into that kind of space?
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles in 2017. And the freelancing kind of just came about because I just couldn't afford my bills. I was working for a company called Pixel Logic at the time, and I did the same thing I did at NBC, which was they called it QC technician. Essentially,
Right.
you just previewed movies before they released on DVD or where have you to make sure everything looked good. And that in itself was an interesting job, and um, but I was like, I'm not making enough money to live here.
Mhm.
So I got the corporate job. And even then I was like, I'm struggling. So, then you go from there. I used Wix free
Mhm.
and just took everything I had from that point, all of my radio stuff, all of my video stuff, just kind of chopped it all together and made it look good. And then I was religiously on Indeed and LinkedIn, just looking at any sort of like part-time freelance, anything that could pay some sort of rate. And I knew
Mhm.
what I could offer. I knew I could produce, I could edit audio, I could edit video, I could shoot stuff, and I was really good at production and coordination. And you just kind of have to, again, you just keep you throw out as much as you can and you just see what sticks. And that's how I got the job with at the show was called Allegedly with Matthew
Mm.
Weiss, who was working at TMZ, and he was like a semi-famous script writer, and then Theo Vaughn. And I applied on Indeed. Uh it didn't pay great. I think it was like $400 a month or something. And I so I used to work Pixel Logic from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. I would get off, go straight to the to Sunset Boulevard, go to the Comedy Store, and then I would go down in the basement and set up all the stuff, set up the recording,
Wow.
post. They essentially didn't do much other than show up to talk for the podcast, and then I did everything else. I would go home and edit. And I
Mm.
did all that because one, I was still in my 20s and I was spry and like you don't have anything better to do. And two, you're building a resume, you're making contacts. There was celebrities on every single episode. And I made you, since you kind of dive your hands in everything, you say yes to everything. It's kind of cliche, but yeah, you're gonna work long hours, you're not gonna get paid great. But because of that, then all of a sudden you get quote unquote lucky again, and you start making better contacts, and people start to recognize that, like, oh, he knows what he's doing. And that's kind of the best resume you could have about you, is that people know, well, at least Anthony knows what he's doing, like he'll be fine. And then you can
Right.
promote yourself from there. And so like I started to talk to other comics that were downstairs and wanted their show edited, and like, hey, Anthony's doing this. And it's not an accident when you're around that stuff and you're working hard that all of a sudden everything else starts to bloom from it, and all these other
Mhm.
opportunities came from it. So anybody that's looking for freelance stuff, if you're doing it to make money, great, but that's going to come later. You need to have a great portfolio first, and you need to be willing to kind of like eat it for a while and kind of
Mhm.
work harder than anyone else. And I feel like I've heard that so many times from people, and you just kind of roll your eyes, but also it's true. And
Right.
maybe once in a while somebody gets lucky and gets it before you or whatever. But like again, it was just a cold Indeed application, just like anyone else. But they happened to call me and they liked my resume. And I'm really good at selling myself. I'm really good. That's the other thing when it comes to job interviews. You have to be able to really hone in on like, here's what I can do and here's how I can do it. And people seem to really appreciate that and are receptive to somebody that at least sounds like they're confident and knowing what they're doing. And yes, there was some stuff that I'm like, absolutely, I know how to do that. And I've never even looked at it.
Right.
Wouldn't ideally say that for everything, but I knew 80% of the stuff that they were needing.
Right.
And so if you're trying to build a brand and you're trying to freelance, get good at that first. Get good at what you want to do before you're trying to sell yourself and you're trying to expand on this whole freelance adventure. Just,
Yeah.
work on that first.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So, life isn't just work, right? You recently went to Japan. So why Japan? My sister lived in Japan. My sister actually speaks Japanese. And just really, I'm always interested in why people choose to go places. But why did your adventure spirit take you to Japan?
I think one, it was good that I had already backpacked Europe, so I had gotten a good taste of about 6 countries there.
Okay.
And, it's somewhat still, even though it's not, but it's westernized in some aspect. There's English and you can kind of get around and stuff looks familiar. And Japan is just otherworldly, and it always looked like it was, and it was just something that I was just so curious about. I wanted to immerse myself in that experience and that culture.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything in particular. I know some people, I went with TJ and his girlfriend and my girlfriend at the time, so the four of us went. And they had specific reasons. I just was like, I just want to see what this life is like. I want to see how these people live. I want to immerse myself in the culture. And you see pictures and you see how they might live and certain customs, but I just needed to know for myself. I was like, let's just do this. We need to stop talking about it and just make it happen. And the
Mhm.
most expensive thing is getting there and
Right.
staying, but everything else is dirt cheap. We would eat, Wagyu beef dinners for $50 in there,
Really?
and they're like, don't tip. So it was incredible. I think I just wanted to kind of see the exact opposite of America, but still a very well high functioning society. And it
Uh-huh.
truly is. It's the upside down. And I mean we had such a good time that TJ and Melody, who we went with, have since then been learning Japanese and are working on their visa process to move to Japan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And actually just went again 4 months ago. And they're basically going every year now.
Okay.
And they're immersing themselves. And I would go back in a heartbeat. And I just had so much fun and just such a high respect for how they treat themselves, their land, and the other people around them. And
Yeah.
really, yeah, I really appreciated how they go about life and their attitude about it. So I would tell anybody, if you can or ever have the opportunity, do it, because it will be like nothing you've ever seen before. And I can't wait to go again.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. We all need adventure in our lives. Well,
Yes.
Anthony, I appreciate your time. So, one final question for you, so we can kind of close this up. So, what is one piece of advice that you've received, from a friend, a family member, a coach, a mentor, you name it, that's just really stuck with you?
You know, it's funny because when I saw that you were going to ask me that question, first thought is I didn't have one. What I had is I got a lot of bad advice, and I got a lot of
Mm,
people that told me that's not how you're supposed to do it, or that you shouldn't go about it that way. So if I were to say anything about that, I would say that if you're passionate about something and you want to do it, maybe be careful about how other people have done it, and know that you may have to forge your own path,
mm,
but sometimes that's a much better way, because I had a lot of people tell me no, or that I'm doing it wrong, only for them to go, how did you get that job? Or how did you do this? Because that's not how I would have done it. And
right.
I would just say, be cautious and don't take everything somebody tells you as rule and as law. It's okay to take advice and to understand where it's coming from, but just know not everybody has it figured out. So
Yeah.
if you want to do it, maybe don't think too much about it and just do it.
I like that. I like that. In addition, I will say I actually wrote down something you said earlier. I loved your lead with your energy. That was
Yeah.
something that you said, and I think I'm gonna actually put that in kind of the show notes when I publish this. I really like that lead with your energy. So awesome. Well, with that, Anthony, thanks so much for your time. I want to thank everybody who joined us. If anybody might want to reach out to you, Anthony, how could they connect with you?
That's a great question. I guess the two things I'd probably say is you could email me. That is amartin.indy, INDY, @gmail.com. Funny enough, that's my email from college for the Indy News.
I saw that. I'm like, yeah, that's his indie
I
email.
didn't have a Gmail at the time, and they set it up for me, and ever since then, I kind of took it and ran with it. So yeah, if you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them. You can email me there. So
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Well, and thanks to all of you for joining me for this current College Bound Success College Career discussion with Anthony Martin. If you found today's episode helpful, please be sure to check out more of my information, but also share this with someone who's navigating their own life and college journey. For more resources, tips, and support, please visit mastalskicoaching.com. That's MASTALSKI coaching.com. And until next time, stay curious, stay confident, and stay boundless. Thanks for listening.